Welcome to Artificial Insights, where we have conversations with leaders and thinkers in AI about how AI is changing economics, work, and us. I'm your host, Daniel Maneri, and this is Season 5. This special episode is part of our student special on AI and education. We wanted to hear directly from students, not just from adults talking about students. Today, I'm joined by Aasha, a grade 12 student from Waterloo, Canada. She's a passionate advocate for social justice and AI literacy, serves as co-chair for the United Nations Girl Up Teen Advisor Program, and founded Youth Tech Labs, Canada's first AI literacy organization for youth. She also developed Ask Eve, a conversational AI built in partnership with Gambit Co. to offer safe, anonymous support around menstruation. Here's my conversation with Aasha. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Of course. So my name is Aasha, and I'm a grade 12 student in Waterloo region. I developed an organization called Youth Tech Labs, where we teach high school kids AI literacy. And our goal is to make sure that the next generation is ready to take on this new tool ethically, responsibly, and be innovative in the way we use it. And making sure that we break down this environment of fear that has been cultivated around this tool to make sure we're prepared for our future and to ensure that student voices are also there to shape the future with this new technology in it.
Cool. And our goal with this series is to highlight what's actually happening so that we can adjust what's going to happen in education. I usually ask, Aasha, there's a question on everyone's mind with a podcast like this, which is, Aasha, are you an AI?
Maybe I'll learn how to think like one, or maybe it'll turn me into an AI. We'll see which happens first.
The interesting thing, I think, for us here is to say what is happening at school and what's happening as a student. What do you see maybe could happen? Since I think you might have more of a perspective on that than most people, but the hearing even what the other students at the last Youth Tech Labs thought about it and what they wanted to do with it was very different than most people that I talk to who are in tech. Since the tech bubble of the insular, we talk to each other. Everybody is, oh, have you tried the latest Cloudbot thing or whatever? And that's not how students are thinking about it. So
Curious, what was your favorite response from the students? It's
mm,
interesting.
I got an insight into the way that I think about how the dangers of AI is not quite the same as how students think about the danger of AI.
Mhm.
And I thought that was really interesting because when I think of the dangers of AI, I think about relying on it too much. I think about delegating the important parts of your thinking or your work or becoming friends with it, maybe. But even though the theme was like Valentine's Day,
Yeah. AI and companions.
I was, yes, I was quite surprised how it seemed like nobody thought that was a good idea. And instead, things were closer to like internet safety and don't give personal information, don't don't use free versions, stuff like that, where I guess that's just not the perspective I was thinking about it in. So it was pretty cool to see that intersection instead.
To put this entire question in terms of perspective, I really think that AI is not replacing student thinking, but the real question is whether students are being taught how to think better with it. And I think really what we try to do at Youth Tech Labs is we're trying to teach them how to use AI responsibly, critically, and be able to, bring out their own voice using this tool. And I think that's really important where we're not taught this in schools. And even the regulations around privacy as well haven't been made clear to us. And I feel like that's detrimental, especially for the generation. We're going to have to carry on this tool. And if we don't know how to use it, there is no hope and there is no future that we're ever going to be able to catch up with the AI curve. When we talk about AI in the education system, I think we've spent so much time asking whether using AI is cheating that we haven't spent enough time asking a much more important question is what should meaningful learning look like now? And how should education now respond to this new technology? And I think what's so scary for us and why a lot of the students really enjoy coming to Youth Tech Labs is that we're trying to learn together how to navigate and understand this new technology in a really safe and welcoming space. Because the way AI was first perceived in schools cultivated a huge environment of fear. And for many students, the conversation for education was no longer about just their ideas or their learning. It was about whether they could prove they were innocent. And that's a major topic a lot of the students from Youth Tech Labs came in with and told me, especially in the very first year of Youth Tech Labs.
That was 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, we started Youth Tech Labs in 2024. So AI
Okay.
was just, the AI curve was just starting. This new technology was becoming widely available. And that's around when ChatGPT came into the picture. And so with this environment, the classroom started to look very different. And it became a place where students understood their work might be questioned and they had to defend their own work. They had to say version histories, explain their own process, and try to prove
Mm.
that what they wrote was actually theirs. So the classroom stopped feeling like a place of trust and started feeling like a place of suspicion. Because of this documentation and trying to prove your innocence, the focus moved away from learning and it moved away from curiosity or experimentation, from developing ideas. And instead, students started writing under pressure, not just to do well, but to avoid being accused. And this is a lot to do with some of the AI tools that were initially used.
I was going to ask who started it. Was it the teachers who brought in these tools, or was it the students who, I don't know, were there bad actors? Did people do this for real, or was it something that the teachers just reacted to before it happened?
So I think to understand how it all began, we have to acknowledge the fact that it is very easy to cheat with AI. And we have to not, I understand we're not ignoring that possibility. It is still there. It is a very big problem in terms of making sure students' work are their own. But what happened is that teachers and the school administration needed a way somehow to verify students' work. Now, with AI, verification became a lot harder because obviously there were some telltale signs when it first came out. You could understand the line of what was ChatGPT generated and what was not. But as AI is becoming increasingly more advanced, that line is beginning to blur and it's becoming more and more difficult to tell. So initially, because a lot of people were very scared it was going to take away learning and critical thinking, we wanted an easy fix. And one solution that would be able to tell us if something was AI generated or not. And we could leave the conversation at that. And so that's where the tool called Turnitin came in. So Turnitin originally was a plagiarism detection tool that then evolved into an AI detection tool. And I
So did your school use it before AI?
So we used it for plagiarism before, and then when they expanded their offers and skill set for their tool, then the school boards wanted to employ it to make sure that they had some way
Mm.
and assurance of checking if a student's work was AI generated or not. However, what a lot of people didn't quite understand is how exactly this tool worked. And so a lot of AI detection tools are probabilistic and are not certain, and they do not offer concrete proof. And they offer guesses that potentially rely on how the information and wording is structured. But again, there needs to be a conversation around if the student can explain their work, if they can explain their ideas, and having the assignment be structured in a way so that even if AI was used, there is still some form of learning and reflection built into that work. And again, there is a whole different aspect of the tool where it does say that it gets one out of every 100 papers that you put into it, it gets wrong. So, we were using a tool that, obviously isn't concrete or, very certain. And we would get numbers on all of our assignments saying how much of it was AI or not. Now, what a lot of us, especially the students, didn't understand is, let's say you get a 20% or 50% saying that it's AI generated. It's not saying 50% of your work is AI generated. It's saying there's a 50% chance that this work is AI generated. So if I flip a coin, I could tell you if that work was AI generated or not. That's how certain it was. And
And how did the teachers use that number?
so a lot of teachers, because they were very afraid of students teaching, developed kind of a gotcha mentality where they were now actively looking out for numbers higher than 20% when they put students' work into this tool. And they would sit down with the student. In many cases, it was just a really brief conversation in terms of your work is over 20%. And so your work is AI generated, and we're not going to count this work depending on the severity or how much or the percentage that they saw. You have to redo your work. You could get kicked out of a program. You could get suspended. There was a lot of really, really harsh penalties that contributed, as I said again, to that environment of fear that was cultivated around this new tool, which really should not be what it's about, because this tool can be really creative and exciting, and you can be very innovative and create a lot of things with it if you know how to use it right. And I feel like that's really where the focus should have been on when the tool first came out is, yes, you can use it for a lot of bad, but because we're here to teach you new things, we're going to use this tool that's going to help you with your future. And we're going to tell you how to use it and go through step by step with you in terms of let's navigate this together. And I feel like that should have been the conversation at the very beginning.
We'll get to that in a second, I think, because that conversation, forward looking and backward looking, I was wondering, do the tools give guidance on things like what this number means and then how to act on it, or the teachers left up to themselves? And did you have a conversation with the teacher about that number?
So I personally didn't have a conversation, but why I actually started learning more about the tool is because of the amount of students coming into youth tech labs having the same exact story of them being falsely accused of using AI in their own work. And I have used Turnitin before to submit my work, so I briefly understood how it worked, but I was trying to understand how its AI detection services worked in terms of the technology. And when I understood that it wasn't very accurate or certain, it made me question why we were even using it. Because if it's so uncertain, there is no definitive way of actually being able to tell. And I feel like the deeper root of the problem is that a lot of the assignments are made where you regurgitate information. It's a lot of pattern recognition, and it's a lot of just saying the same thing over and over again, just seeing if you can memorize the information. And AI is really good at that. It works extremely well at pattern recognition and looking how we can optimize the answers to give the best answer. And so when you make these assignments that are built for AI, you're going to get a lot of students trying to figure out what to do. We need to start rethinking how we're going to structure the work that we're seeing, and not even the work, but also the assessments in the education system. So they're not built where AI can easily pass it.
You had a story previously that you shared with me about who came to, I think, understand the Turnitin score. I'm thinking of when you said your mother watched you write something and hand it in.
Yes. So I actually decided to put Turnitin to the test to see if it actually worked. And because I myself was a little skeptical about the AI detection services, but I'd like to know if they worked or didn't. And so I actually asked ChatGPT to generate an answer to a really simple question that you would find in school. And again, this was just for my own amusement. And I got the generated answer and I put it into an AI detection tool, and it said it was 100% AI. And then I asked ChatGPT to take the same answer, but I prompted it to create a response that was human like. And I put it back into the AI detection tool, and it said 0% AI. And so that's just one of the few examples looking back. I was just thinking to myself, we really shouldn't be using this tool. because it obviously really doesn't work. But it's also the fact that I think when we're actually talking about the foundation of the education system, it's supposed to help us prepare for our future and the job sector. And the job sector has now evolved with this new technology to incorporate it. And instead of being taught how to use it, we're actually being taught to become afraid of it, to not even touch it. And so when you teach kids to stay away from the tools that will actually help them and cultivate their success, we're not going to be prepared for our future. And the fact that all of the, as I said, all the assessments we're having, they're the same repetitive information. We need to know how to create something new in the education system where we're able to use AI within our assessments, but still have that same level of critical thinking and reflection that can give us a deeper understanding of the topics we're learning.
And have you had any positive or negative interactions with teachers about AI and integrating it with the classroom?
I have actually had a very interesting experience where I was actually asked to do an assignment and create an AI generated song. Now, with this new technology, there's going to have some new developments in terms of the asks and what we're being able to do with it. But it was my first time being asked to create an AI generated song in school. And I was very surprised we were being asked to do it as well. And while our teacher was explaining the assignment, they had mentioned they had actually tested this assignment by creating an AI generated song for their son's birthday. And that's a wonderful sentiment. However, they also shared with us that they used a free version of ChatGPT. They put in their son's name, his birthday, his likes, his dislikes, his family, the family's name, all of his personal information was put into the free version of ChatGPT, where it would be used for training data, and all of his private information got sent out there. And keep in mind, it wasn't even his, it was his son's. So after he told us about this and how he got this wonderfully personalized AI generated song, he told us we could do the same thing to provide more context to get a better response. And while I don't dispute that providing context gives a better outcome, I just think there are some limitations to security and privacy when it comes to AI, and especially when you're looking at AI use with minors. And this issue comes around or really centers around the problem of the lack of AI education in schools. We don't have any AI literacy in schools as of right now. And it can cause problems like this where you have students think that they can put their private information into AI tools. And so all of that sensitive information will get released, but they'll have no idea what happened or why that's wrong. So I really think there needs to be a push of not just using AI tools, but actually knowing how to use them and what not to do within the classroom. And it's not the issue of just using AI, it's an issue of knowing how to use it well. And students need to understand when AI can be useful for brainstorming, when it crosses the line. You have to understand how to verify outputs, how to question what a tool gives them. So, not even privacy, but also questioning the output. And then also understanding that AI literacy is not just knowing what a tool can do, it's knowing what you should do and not do with the tool. I really would love to see this applied into the curriculum in schools as well, because I think it would be really beneficial for students to start preparing for their future. And that's really my hope, where initially, when we weren't allowed to use AI in schools, I created youth tech labs as a way for students to learn more about AI literacy. But the end goal was really to have something like youth tech labs within school.
I guess what have you seen in terms of people being allowed to use AI at school? Is that something that UTEP Labs has had an impact on, or is it closer to you do school and then you do AI on the side?
So we've now shifted more towards being able to use AI, for example, for studying, where it is a really great method for testing or for idea generation. I find it personally useful for studying or breaking down really hard concepts, where it's able to give you examples that are personalized for you. And it's able to make every single student feel understood and heard in terms of their own pace and how exactly they learn. And I think that's really important when, especially in classrooms nowadays, you have a classroom of 30 students and each individual student learns differently. And it is really hard for a teacher to try to manage all of those students and cater to their individual learning styles and answer every single one of their questions. And so when you have AI that's able to help them not replace a teacher, but get to certain questions faster, get the answer faster. And so they're able to think more highly and deeply about that topic and then talk about that with the teacher. You're using AI as a time saver. You're not replacing the form of teaching. And I think that's really important where we're able to understand the line between where we should and shouldn't use AI in school because that line hasn't become clear before and it still isn't very clear now. But I do like the direction we're going in terms of trying to use it more for helping us save time and for also being able to look at multiple perspectives. And within Youth Tech Labs, what we try to do with AI, right, is we use it for building and for innovating. So, past all of the idea generation, we're actually trying to get our students to build product. And so, we're trying to help them see how AI can be incorporated with different business skills, how it can be incorporated using research, and then how we can use it to cater to different audiences and create an output that's best for them.
So looking at things like job skills and study skills, but not yet integrating it with any kind of output for school.
Exactly. So they're living in two separate worlds right now, but I feel as time goes on, those worlds will collide eventually. The goals should be aligned in terms of they're both there to help a student's learning and help them with success. And as I said, education is there to help students succeed in their job market or post secondary or going on to the next stage of their life. And so we give them the tools that they need to help them succeed at that. And the new tool that is very powerful and that can be very beneficial to students is AI. And so I feel like within the education system, if that's the foundation of the values and the mission they're trying to achieve, then we just need to figure out a way how to incorporate this new tool to carry out that same mission.
You mentioned the IB program at one point when we were talking before, and you mentioned that in particular, the IB program has a much stricter standard, I think, around usage or detection of AI. What's your experience been with that extra scrutiny?
So, in the IB program at my school, we've been told that if you're caught, and I say this quotations, if you're caught with Turnitin having an assignment over 20% AI generated, or I should say specifically a chance of being an AI generated, then you get kicked out of the program. And that
Oof.
was the consequence for students who they thought were trying to use AI. And I do really understand the need to make sure that students are still keeping critical thinking, that they're not cheating, and that their work is their own. But the stakes of the environment and the fear around it were so high that students became so afraid of the tool that once they figured out the patterns that the tool picked up on, like formal language or longer sentences or having three ideas in each sentence, they actually started going away from that. And so what we saw was the quality of students' writing decreasing drastically just because they were trying to adapt to make sure they weren't detected by this tool. So it wasn't about learning anymore, it was about learning how to avoid this tool or avoid being detected by this tool.
Did you have to do that yourself?
Yes, I actually did, and you know, it saddened me quite a bit when I would write a beautiful piece of writing that I thought I was ready to present, and I'd realize I was like, "Oh, you know what? It might pick up on this or that," and I'd have to basically scrutinize and ruin my own work for the sake of trying to make sure I wasn't detected by this tool or ensuring that my teachers didn't think I was cheating. But
Mm.
that's the environment I was in, and I thought it was absolutely ridiculous because I feel like we were going completely backwards in terms of learning. We were learning all of the wrong things. And I take a lot of pride in my writing as well. I spend a lot of time trying to think of things and create a really great output. And there I was sitting down trying to figure out how I could butcher my own work so that it could pass this detection tool. I think, yeah, one of the main things just to end off is just what does meaningful learning look like now? And how can we incorporate this new technology into education?
Can't. It's impossible. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it's not impossible. A lot of reworking of the systems we already have because the systems put in place are not built for this tool. And so it will take a lot of thinking and being willing and being open to change to adapt our systems to fit this new technology. And I feel like because of the fact that we would have to adopt a lot of change, that's maybe why we're so resistant to it. But if, again, we actually want students to succeed, it's a necessary change. And it's one we have to put in place soon and risk of falling behind farther than we already are. So I think it's just something to end off with there and how AI is not replacing student thinking. The real question is whether students are being taught how to think better with it. The AI, it's a great way to learn how practically we're evolving in the workforce and how we're working with it to have new developments in technology and research. For example, in like biology, how we're able to cure new disease. That I feel like that's something really interesting that we could learn from it, but that's not being highlighted, unfortunately, in schools right now. But I hope will be soon.
I started this podcast because of an image that came to me in a dream. Back when cities had walls, everyone passed through the gate. Talk to enough people there and you'd understand the city. I wanted to stand at the gate and understand not just how AI was changing, but how AI was changing us. If you know someone building or leading with AI, or if this episode was useful, an introduction, a share, or a quick review on your podcast app all help keep these conversations going and help others find them. You can reach me on LinkedIn at Daniel Maneri or by email at daniel@maneri.house. That's Daniel at manary.haus. Thanks for listening.